Welcome everyone, my name is Jeffrey St Laurent and this is the Tuesday live show. I am talking to coaches today who are overwhelmed with the thought of launching their business, or maybe they've been doing it, but they're just overwhelmed with the whole aspect of how it's all going to work, what's going to happen, what if this, what if that. They get paralyzed by fear, anxiety, etc., and they're just overwhelmed with kind of what to do and where to go with it. And my hope is that as you watch this, I'm able to help you, give you some perspectives that will help either lessen the overwhelm, maybe take it away for a little bit, but just know that no matter what it is, I want you to be able to, as a result of what you hear today, be able to just take the next step and recognize that no matter how overwhelmed you get with what, you're able to kind of ground yourself back in a few items that allow you to start to move forward. So before I get into some of those ideas and perspectives that I want to share from doing this and being overwhelmed many times myself since 2004, since I've been doing coaching full time, I want to let you know I do record all of these shows. I put them in my university and my website, sellingcoaching.com. I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I have a lot of great resources at sellingcoaching.com. You could start off on the homepage. If you enter your name and email, you can get my audio program. It's Launching Your Coaching Business, the First 3 Vital Steps. That's also going to put you in my email community, and that's going to allow you to, we'll stay in touch. I send emails on a weekly basis. It'll really allow you to start to get some great information and keep your head in the game. With that being said, let's talk about overwhelm today. And this isn't just your normal overwhelm talk, etc. Overwhelm, well, just do it. At the end of the day, if we could just say just do it, then you just do it. But you're not doing it. And so I think where it comes down is having been overwhelmed so many times myself when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think the biggest piece of it is the fact, or the simple fact that, a lot of people, and I said this in the last couple of weeks as well, a lot of us are not they're not entrepreneurs, right? We're employees. And I've been mostly an entrepreneur my whole life, but a lot of people I work with and deal with, the coaches that are coming into this industry, are employees, and when you're an employee, there's a very defined avenue that you go down when it comes to what you do for your job. You know what time you're supposed to be in, what time you can go home, what time you can take a break, or how many breaks you have and how long they're supposed to be. There's guidelines. You show up at work, typically there's someone to tell you what to do and train you or keep you accountable, or the fact that you're at work, right? You've got to do some things at work, right? So at the end of the day, it's very black and white. And if you do this and you do an okay job, you're probably going to keep your job, and every 2 weeks, every month, every week, whatever it is, you're going to get a paycheck, and it's going to be the same amount minus taxes. And there's going to be taxes taken out. The money's going to go in your 401k if you have one, or it's very predictable, right? There's also a lot of not predictable pieces of being an employee as well, right? But entrepreneurship is very different. And so where a lot of the overwhelm comes from, and it's important to understand this too, is if you put some thought into it, is not just like what it is we're doing. That's where a lot of overwhelm comes from, is what am I going to do? But a lot of it is like it's all the other factors that come into it. It's very different for the average person because, you're sitting in your office and you're alone, and it's like it doesn't matter how much time you put in. You could spend all day, every day in your office, on the weekends, at nights, etc., and still not be getting paid. And you could be doing that for years and still not be getting paid. It doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean you're not working. It doesn't mean you're doing the wrong things necessarily, right? But it's understanding that we get paid for results, not time, as an entrepreneur. But there's the whole uncertainty of it all. There's the whole unpredictability part of it all. There's being able to hold ourselves accountable for it all because there's no one else holding us accountable for it. And then there's the added, not risk necessarily, but uncertainty of like, wow, so in order for me to do this, I've actually, before I really earn any money, I've got to actually spend some money to actually bring to do, to get some things ready for business or set up for business. Now, fortunately, we don't have a lot of startup costs with this business. We really don't. However, there are costs involved. And I've always found the biggest and always will be our largest expense are people to help us, like mentors, business coaches, etc. Someone like myself. And I don't say that because that's what I do and I want you to hire me. It's not the case at all. It just, that's what I've found over the years. Always my largest expenses have been the people that I've hired to help me along the way. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have the people that have helped me along the way. That's why, full circle, I come back and become a mentor coach after being, a life coach, if you will, for so long, over 10 years, is because I've recognized the value of having that. And I felt like I had a lot to contribute, having done it successfully prior to that. But regardless of that, whatever costs, certification costs, do we have to get certified as a coach? No. I went through a certification, a school called IPEC. It's fantastic. I love it. I highly recommend it. Do you need a certification to become a coach? No. Do you just like, did I need a certification as a personal trainer to become a personal trainer? No. Right? Anyone can call themselves a coach. Anyone can call themselves a trainer. There's a lot of unregulated industries, even though there's regulatory, places out there. There are regulations as a coach, but anyone can wake up one day and be like, I'm going to coach. Right? But certifications, things like that, just personal development, things like that, those are high. I would highly recommend those, right? But those are at a cost. My point is, though, is that as you do this business, there's some of those pieces that you're putting out money towards before you even have earned a cent in this business, which can add to the pressure of having to create results. Add in the pressure of, you're in a relationship with someone, a spouse, a partner, etc. And, maybe they're subsidizing your ability to do this, meaning you're not contributing financially in order to do this. Maybe they're helping pay for some of this stuff as well. Maybe you're doing it on your own and you have a job, a full-time, part-time, whatever time job. And now you're coming into this. And it's just like you've got to, I'm working full time because I need money. And then whether you hate or love that job, whatever spectrum you're in, regardless, I want to do this coaching thing. So now there's the balance of that time. But then it's also like, there's a certain thing where, I've got to create reasonable results in reasonable time, right? There's a part to that. And sometimes that can be discouraging, but it can also be scary and overwhelming. And I'm just kind of laying out all the factors that go into it. If anything, I'm not necessarily trying to validate if you're feeling that way, but if you start to feel validated, like, oh my God, no wonder I'm overwhelmed. That's what I feel compelled to say right now. No wonder we're overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed. No wonder I get overwhelmed. I will tell you this. Now, I've been doing this 17 years. And all those things, I can talk about all of those things because those are just like probably a handful of the things that have really kept me overwhelmed in the past. I remember sleepless nights. Even after I was in my business, I remember this is like 08, 09, 2010, if I remember correctly, some of those years. And I was still doing well in my business. I still was creating I had 6-figure results. The challenge I'm going to bed and I'm overwhelmed and I'm anxious because I'm like, I don't know where my next client's coming from. Even though I was doing the work, I had bills, I had a mortgage, I had a second mortgage, I had car payments. I had a family I was supporting by myself. And so it was hard. And so now I had a business and I was earning money. I was still earning decent money as an entrepreneur, but I was supporting all of my lifestyle at that point. And it wasn't a very lavish lifestyle. I don't know, a little lavish lifestyle, but there's pressure on it, right? There's pressure to have to produce. And I remember a lot of sleepless nights, just like, oh my God. And I couldn't think about it. It's hard for me to think about, especially in 2008, 2009, as the economy started to really change at that point. Like, who knows where we're going to be now in the next several years. I mean, there's going to be some types of change coming up, right? We don't know how much, et cetera. But there's a shift in that, in to pay attention to the media and the news, which is a lot of fear-based, like that gave me a lot of overwhelm, right? So I'm sharing some of these perspectives because there's a lot of factors that can come into this space. Now let me fast forward, to where I'm at now, 17 years later, is I don't get as overwhelmed. And I'll share why, because this is the whole point of the show today. I'm gonna share some of the things that I've done and my perspective on it to kind of help you now, because I wish I knew some of these things. They're not things that I will say that you can just hear and be like, oh, it solves my overwhelm. I wish I could. I wish I could do that. Hopefully, it will help subside it a little bit, so you can start moving forward. But there are certain things that I learned along the way about myself and about entrepreneurship that I feel are very helpful that I wanted to share today. And so the first part is I'll say it more generally for you as a listener. You've got to really understand yourself and your tendencies. So I'll share along my story and I'll relate it to you. Is what helped me the most is understanding how I operated, right? So I operate best in crunch time, in the last minute, right? Like these Tuesday shows. I come in here with no preparation. I come in here with a topic, brief description, and then I go, right? If I have to sit and think ahead of time and plan it out, map it all out, like I will waste hours and get nothing accomplished. And so but it took me a while to understand that about myself, right? So I would get overwhelmed, I get frustrated, I'm trying to over prepare for things, right? So then I started really understanding myself. So now I realize, like, I wait till the last minute, right? I need a deadline. If I'm going to do something, when's the deadline? If I don't have a deadline, then I try and create a deadline externally and or within myself to get things done, because I'm not going to do anything ahead of time because there's no stimulus for me. So I'm showing you how I understand myself. And this is one of the things that have helped me with overwhelm, which is the message to you, is understand yourself and your tendencies. So I wait till the last minute. I wait till things done. I don't over prepare for things. I come to my coaching sessions, my mentor coaching sessions, the things that I do live like this, a lot more relaxed and calm, because I don't have the pressure put on myself to have to over prepare, etc. Right? So I've understood a lot of myself. I want you to start to, as you're moving forward, start to understand your tendencies. There's a big thing that I had to learn about myself, which I want you to listen to this, because I believe this is applicable to everybody in entrepreneurship. And I would be willing to bet people that have been in entrepreneurship would agree with this. And you can write in the comments if you're listening to this, if you've been an entrepreneur and you've learned this as well. But I've had to learn to trust myself in my ability that I will always figure it out. Sometimes in the beginning, I didn't have that trust because I was still new to everything. But after a while, I could look back and go, whenever I was scared or overwhelmed or didn't know what I was doing, or any of those family of emotions, I would start to look back, even prior to coaching, when I was in the fitness industry or just anything in general, with what I would do. And I always seemed to have figured it out. There was really never, not even any examples where I didn't figure something out. And even if in other words, where I couldn't move forward and do something and create some type of result. And I'm not saying everything I did created a positive, favorable, desirable result. But I will say that I moved forward with something, and then I learned and I grew from that. There was no mistakes, right? There might have been failure, but I don't see it as failure. I saw it as the greatest lessons, right, that I learned when I didn't get the outcome, right? But I got myself past the fear and overwhelm to do something, and to me that was the success. So, but I would always look back and understand that I always figured it out. At the end of the month, I always figure out a way to pay the bills and to be responsible for my finances, etc. And there were months where, when I had a lot of expenses, etc., things like that, where, I had, because entrepreneurship sometimes, especially towards the beginning, your income isn't necessarily this, every month you're earning the same thing every week. Like, it goes up and down sometimes. It still goes up and down for me, but it's not as drastic, and that level with which it's at is higher than when I'm starting off. So you're starting off 2-3 years, etc. Your income could be 2, 3, 4,000 a year, a month, or maybe a little higher, even maybe less, right? But it can fluctuate a lot more. But the point is that there are some months where I couldn't meet my expenses, but I didn't worry, because I had stuff set up where I had an account where I could pull from, and then next month I made more money. I pay up the account. So I started to understand my finances better and how to manage a business and things like that, right? And those things in the beginning, you might be like, well, Jeff, I don't know how to do that. And so part of what I'm sharing with you is you've got to set yourself up for success in terms of what's going to allow you to relax and approach this very calmly. To stay the course, to trust the fact that you'll figure it out, to trust the fact that you will find a way to make things work, that you're resourceful. Now, if you don't consider yourself a resourceful person, if you look back at your track record and realize I haven't found a way to make things work, and I haven't, met the bills every month no matter what, etc., then what you got to start doing is start finding some trends in your life, any aspect of your life. You just could be like, and if you can't figure it out, ask people who know you the most, who love you the most, who love and hate you the most. Those are the people that love you the most, right? They know you the most. Ask, if you can't see it in yourself, ask those people, what do you see in me? What have I been consistent with in my life? Right? It's more challenging to look inward at ourselves and say, oh, here's what I'm good at. That's another thing I've learned to do for myself, is I've learned to understand what I'm good at and embrace what I'm good at. Everyone's good at something. Everyone's good at something. And if in your head right now you're like, oh, I'm not good at anything, like, well, you're good at something. Maybe you're good at telling yourself you're not good at something. Maybe that's what you're consistent at. And it might sound kind of funny saying that, right? But at the end of the day, that glass is half full because you're good at something. So now you've got to say, well, now how can I turn that around and be consistent at what's a new message I want to tell myself, right? So there's a lot of pieces to that, but it's starting to understand from yourself, from other people, where your strengths are, where your consistent pieces are, even if they have nothing to do with a coaching business or anything like that. And it's finding ways to leverage that and pull that into what you do here. And that's a big piece. And then begin to trust those. So in other words, when you get overwhelmed, you got to lean back on the things that you trust, right? So it's kind of like the relationship I have with my mentor coaching clients, the groups I do, the one-on-one stuff I do. I always tell people, I'm like, listen, right now you might not have the confidence. I'm like, that's part of the value in hiring me and working with me is that you can leverage my trust in you. You can leverage my faith in terms of where you're going. I'm going to say, listen, here's what we're going to do. And you'll be like, oh my God, that's what we're going to do? Are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. And here's how we can approach it. How does that feel? And how would you like to tweak it that maybe might make it a little bit more comfortable for you, et cetera? And then we have a little camaraderie, work it out. And now, but you're overwhelmed. And I'll say, you don't have to know it all. You don't have to figure it all out, because that's what I'm here for, is to help figure the things out and kind of rest in my trust. Like, in other words, I'll lay something out for a group of mine or for a client of mine. I'm like, all right, we're going to do a signature program, let's say. All right, here's what it's going to look like. Let's pick a date. Let's back it up a couple of weeks. We'll create a landing page. We'll create this. We're going to do the marketing copy in this format, problem, solution, outcome, etc. And here's what I want you to, and so go write it. Let's pick a date, go write it. And they're like, dude, you're tapped, right? And I'm like, I know. But I'm like, but I can see it all because I've done it all. So I say, hey, listen, just trust the fact that I know what I'm doing, and see what it feels like in that space. All you've got to do is you've got to do the work. You do that work. And so eventually what happens is you do it and you get through it. And then you can get through it and you can look back and go like, well, I did it. And you start creating evidence for yourself that you can look back on, where you can say, I've done it before. And are you going to create all the results in it that you want to? No, you're not. I'm saying no, you're not. I don't want to be the person that says no, you're not. Maybe there's a person out there that will and that can. Prove me wrong with that. But I'm saying the reality is you're not going to create all the results that you want. It's not going to go as smoothly as you want to. But that's just the point. It most likely never is. Can it happen? Yes. Have I done things where it's gone better than I've hoped? Yes. But I'll tell you this. It wasn't early on. It's been 15 years in. It's 7-8 years in. It's a handful. It's a bunch of years in. The stuff I'm doing now within my business, even as a mentor coach, it's in the stuff I start sharing with my clients and the things that I'm doing. I'll always tell my groups when I'm working with them or people I'm working with them, I'll lay out something that I'm doing and I'll say, I'm like, here's what that looks like, so they can see a vision of kind of what I'm helping them put together in a very primitive stage. And I'll say, and they might look at that and go like, oh my God, oh wow, it's so well thought out, blah, blah, blah. And then I go, okay, so that took me 6 years to figure out, because I want to give them the snapshot of it. It's not like I'm a mentor coach and I put it all together. as much as I knew where I wanted to go in a lot of different ways, it hasn't played out that way, and it's adjusted and morphed along the way. And I did things trial and error, things that worked, things that didn't work. But it's taken me 6 years or whatever to put together something. So now as I go in my 7+ year as a mentor coach, I'll say like it took me that amount of time to put something together. And I tend to take more time to put things together because now I realize that if I do something too quick, I'm going to most likely have to end up redoing it. So that's why when I teach, as I teach you and I help you out with all this, everything, if you were to work with me in your business, I'm not teaching you fancy tactic, etc. I'm teaching you some fundamental pieces of it. I'm having you do like the grunt work. It's the not fun work. It's not like, oh, we're going to run a Facebook ad and we're going to spend $10 a day and we're going to create this cool landing page. And I'm going to be like, no, we're going to actually like make a list of people and we're going to actually start making phone calls and emails. And it's just like, it's not sexy. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. But what I understand about why I'm teaching you to do that is because you've got to learn the mechanics of it all before you start doing some of the other strategies and tactics that a lot of the marketers are marketing to us coaches, because you can't get around that. You can't go on social media without getting a sponsored ad talking about why everything that everyone's telling you to do is wrong. It's like, oh, you don't need to run ads and you don't need to create an audience and you don't need to do content marketing and you don't need to do posts. All you need to do is just one simple thing that I do that's made me millions. It's like, really, dude? Come on. It doesn't work like that. It hasn't worked for you, and can it work? I'm sure it does, and I'm sure it can, right? But so what we've got to do is we've got to go back down to it all, and we've got to recognize that we're starting something from the ground up. And we're building something, and the biggest thing that you're working on is yourself. The reason why I love entrepreneurship more than anything is because in order for me or you or someone to be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to grow and become more valuable. We get paid. It's a law of compensation. We get paid for the value that we bring to the market. So if we want to get paid more, what do we've got to do? We've got to become more valuable. Since we are the service, since we are the product we're selling to people, this service called coaching, this very ambiguous thing that we really can't even explain, is since that's there, the only way we're going to get paid for that is becoming more valuable. And in the beginning, what it is first is understanding your value, understanding and acknowledging the value of what you bring. Because when you understand the value of what you bring to the market, you'll understand why someone might hire you in the first place. And that is what takes time. That's one of my biggest goals of when I start working with someone, and even sometimes for a while out of our work together, is, and I don't say this necessarily directly to them. There are a lot of times I do. Sometimes in the first session, even before they hire me in a complimentary mentor coaching session, when we're starting to work out their message and their niche, etc. One of the things I'll say is one of my biggest job right away, or throughout we're doing through all the tactical things, etc., is to help you understand your value in the market. And that only comes by doing things. And if we're overwhelmed and doing all, we're not trusting and coming from the space that I was talking about today, we're never going to learn that stuff. And as much as I love coaching and believe in it, etc., you can coach yourself in circles, but and try and come up with aha moments, etc. And I'm not saying that awareness isn't helpful at all, but you could still be overwhelmed. And so we've just got to trust enough, find enough people, support, have a mentor, have someone like that to just shift our perspective a little bit so that we can start to move forward and learn from where we go, learn from what happens, and understand how I become more valuable from those lessons that I learn, and recognize there is no failure. There is no timeline. As much as, we're all like, oh, we're setting goals and for the longest time, right? Goal setting and having tangible goals and making them specific, etc. Yes, I'm not negating the importance of that, but also I'll say I've also understood the importance of wiping away some of those things. I actually don't have specific goals. I've achieved great things. I call them more visions, and I start to see them come. And this is just how I operate. I'm not saying, oh, wipe away if goals work for you, etc. but I don't set an income goal for the year or for the month or for the day or for the week, right? I have an idea of where I've been. I have an idea of what's going on in my business, where I have an idea of where I'd like to go. And I'd say, okay, and I have an idea of where I'm at on a monthly basis and where I'm ultimately pacing for. But that's not, oh, I'm behind, I'm ahead, I'm a whatever. That doesn't influence what I do in that moment. It just kind of gives me a barometer of what's possible and where I can go. And more often than not, I'd say, if not most of the time, without giving hard statistics, I've far than exceeded any vision that I've had. And sometimes it's taken me a lot longer and also a lot shorter amount of time to accomplish this vision of what I've had. And sometimes it's looked a lot more grander or a lot less than what I thought. But I found that was the value of setting some of those visions for myself, and also the value of wiping away, really hard specific timelines. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to earn this much money by this much time and have an exact amount. And I'm going to quit my job by this. Having some general ideas, great. But oftentimes when those aren't met, then we start to second guess ourselves and, oh, I didn't earn the money. I didn't get the amount of clients I wanted to get or supposed to get. Therefore, I have failed. Therefore, I have not made it. And now it's January 2022 and I have not quit my job, and that was my goal, and therefore something doesn't feel good about that. But why shouldn't it feel good? Because, at the end of the day, so that was an area where you wanted to achieve. But if you constantly reevaluate along the way, you will, and if you're honest with yourself, you will have known far prior to that wasn't going to happen on that date, right? So it's sometimes we'll set a goal or idea of where we want to go, and then we just kind of forget about it. And it's just like, listen, if you're not reevaluating and pivoting on a daily, even sometimes hourly basis, then, well, how about this? That's my message that I'll wrap this up with. Pivot on a daily, hourly, even sometimes, half hour basis when you're doing work, because you can start off strong and, 30 minutes later be flailing. So you got to be aware of, like, I'm flailing right now. Let me take a deep breath. Let me get back. Where am I at? What am I doing? What am I looking to accomplish? Okay, let me refocus, repivot. Right. But if you just are mindless of that, you end up, there's another day gone. There's another day I didn't do anything, which doesn't do anything to our self-esteem and our value and what's going on inside of our head. So anyways, I could keep going on. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully this will start to just give you a little bit of a better perspective on some of the things that you can kind of take away, strip away, or add in that will just kind of lessen the burden, lessen the anxiety, the overwhelm that you have. That will start to allow you to just move forward a little bit more consistently. That's all that matters. Just move forward a little bit more consistently. Anyways, if you're listening to this and you find that, you listen to some of the things I say and realize that, that mentorship, that guidance from someone like myself would be very helpful for you, and the time might be right for you to, have that mentorship and really be moving your business forward, consider working with me as your mentor coach. Consider working with me one-on-one. I do have some spots available. If that's something that you're considering, go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, and fill out the form at the bottom of the Work With Me page, and I will follow up with you. I will actually give you a phone call. We'll have a relaxed conversation. Maybe we move forward with something, maybe we don't, but either way, we'll have a discussion. We'll figure out where we can go from there. So sellingcoaching.com, fill out the form at the bottom of the Work With Me page.